forward and back, open and close. It doesn't like to go backwards and it doesn't like to go sideways. So this is really imperative to remember in anything that you do involving your knee. The movement when you need to take your leg sideways or in any other direction, any rotational movement must come from the hips. And the head of the femur, which is the thigh bone, fits into the hip socket, and you just gently make sure it's nice and fitted in there, and you rotate from that point. So your thigh rotates, not your knee. You must always keep your knee only moving forward and back. And if your hips are a little tight, this means you can't always do the full range of the pose that you would like to. For example, if you're in Parsvakonasana, you may not be able to turn all the way up. You may have to keep that back hip down a little bit until your body is ready. The other point of looking after your knee is making sure you've got nice long hamstrings, because if the hamstrings are tight, they can pull the knee joint out of alignment and put pressure on it. And the other way that we make sure the knee is nice and aligned is to always work the feet properly and really getting that full spread of the foot and the activation into what they call the 4 points of the foot. So the ball of the big toe, the little toe, the inner heel and the outer heel. So that'll be the 3 things that we're going to work on this morning is hamstrings, foot placement and hip work. So Kath is here to demonstrate. Enjoy. So we're going to start off with just a simple alignment exercise. Now we've got some coins, can be any coins, and you place one under each ball of big toe, ball of little toe, the inner heel and the outer heel. So do both feet if you can, but Kath today, if you don't want to do both, don't worry too much. Stand in Tadasana. Soften the legs off a little, just a little, and close your eyes so you can really concentrate on your breath and moving energy. So this work is quite subtle in the beginning. You have to concentrate. So we're taking away all other distractions by closing our eyes and allowing ourselves to give all of our attention to the breath as it moves into the body, filling the belly, the heart, the body. And then when that belly is nice and full, you want to visualize all of your energy going down through those legs. And when they reach the ankles, when your breath reaches the ankles, it splits out into 4 separate directions to those 4 coins. And you use your mind to visualize that, and hopefully you feel those 4 points pressing into the coins equally and activating the foot in the way that it needs to be activated. Now what you can see in Kath's legs is that her ankle, her knee and the centre of her thigh in front of the hip are all aligned, and this is what you want in every pose, even your your standing poses, and the line of the ankle is nice and straight and there's good activation into both sides of the foot, and this is what you want to protect the knee, even in cross legs and poses like that. So we're going to examine that a little bit further later on. So you can spend quite a few minutes here per day, 1-2 minutes, just simply doing this exercise. It might take a while for you to be able to really feel it and get that result, but it does happen, and it's a very important practice to do. So the next aspect we're going to look at is hamstrings. Now hamstrings are really important to control the knee and make sure that there's no pressure. So the first and simplest way of doing hamstrings is a pose called Uttanasana, but we're going to start with the modified version because it's really important that you, before we do it actually, we're going to do tiger and cat because we want to know the action of it. So we're going to come to tiger and cat. We want to make sure that we know the action of the pose. So as we inhale and look up, the sitting bones roll upwards to the ceiling, and as we exhale and push down, navel comes in, sitting bones roll under. Now, just pausing there, Kath, if you have tight hamstrings, this is often the position that your pelvis is locked in when you're trying to fold forward. So we're trying to create length in the hamstrings. Now, the hamstrings go roughly from the back of her knee, I'll just come around here, from the back of the knee and to the sitting bone. That's roughly where the hamstring is. You can notice that this is in the shortened position. But when she does tiger and she rolls those sitting bones up, turning the sitting bones to the ceiling, you can see that the distance from that back of the knee, creasing the knee, to the sitting bone has elongated. Now, this is the action that you're going to need to be able to access when you are lengthening your hamstrings in Uttanasana. So when Kat's ready, she's going to come up. We're going to do a modified version first on a chair or a kitchen bench or a stool. You come up nice and high. You have your legs a little bit soft. You're not pushing your chest to the ground. Chest is neutral. Then you turn your sitting bones up, just like in tiger. And you want to feel the length in the hamstrings, and you just stay there. So you could see that as she turned her sitting bones up, there was that length from the back of the knee to the sitting bone increased, and she will feel those hamstrings. Even if you're quite advanced, you can still feel a bit of a stretch in this one, might not be too strong. You can now experience people press down into the floor with your heels and a little bit wide, which will give the sitting bones even a little bit more turn and lengthen those hamstrings even more. And of course, you're trying to press into all 4 points of the foot. Now, if this becomes easy for you, you can turn the chair around and take your elbows down to the seat of the chair. So walk in a tiny bit, Kath, I think. Yeah, that's it. And then really turning those sitting bones up. And again, pressing down and wide with those heels. You want to get that length in the hamstring, but you don't want the ribs to go out. The ribs are quiet, so you want the upper body nice and soft. It really is action with those sitting bones and getting the hamstring length. So really focusing on that. Turn them up even a little bit more, pressing the heels wide, turning sitting bones up. That's it, good. And you literally just stay there. Now, of course, if you're more flexible, you might just bring your hands to the floor and you can still do this. You can have hands out in front of you initially and relax the head, working those sitting bones. And of course, those of you who are more flexible, more experienced, can relax the body down, but it's the same principle. The 4 points of the feet are working, the heels press down and wide, and the sitting bones are turning up. And again, you are literally just spending time there. So hamstrings and other muscles, they don't really like to be stretched ballistically, so short stretches or overstretched. So you're working with the breath. So you can see as Kat's there, she inhales and her body lifts gently. She exhales and she relaxes further, pressing down into those heels, turning those sitting bones up. And just time passing and lengthening over time will help to release those hamstring muscles. Now there's also a mechanism called reciprocal inhibition, and that is when muscle groups work together. So as the hamstrings lengthen, you are contracting. It happens naturally, but you can also put a little conscious thought into contracting the quad muscles, the thighs, and this will release the hamstrings even further. You just saw Kath release even further. And again, just staying there. So these muscles don't change quickly. In fact, hamstrings are said to help us cultivate patience. And it does take time, not just time over time, but time in the pose to create a new message for the muscles to maintain a lengthened state on a regular basis. So you can stay there 2 minutes. If you can make it to 2 minutes, that's ideal. Every day, you'll be amazed at what it does for you. If you can stay there for 3, that's great. Now to come out, bend your legs a little, take some weight into your hands. That can be on the floor or on the chair or on the bench, and then uncurl softly, pressing into the feet, using whatever you need to support to don't stress the hamstrings too much. And then once you're upright, take a good breath, inhale, and a good releasing sigh and sound with a smile. Good. Now as you walk around, you might notice you walk a little differently. John Wayne was said to get his signature walk after doing a strong hamstring session. So yeah, very good, Kath. Now of course, especially with the knees, we need to look at not just the central body of the hamstrings, but we need to look at the inner and outer hamstrings as well. This is really important. So the inner and outer hamstrings are the ones that if they tighten, they pull sideways on the knee joint. So Kath is going to lay down on the mat. I think, that one will be good. You may need to have a strap handy. So in a moment, she's just going to take a moment to have a little relax and catch her breath. Now when she's ready, she's going to raise her left leg up, and she can probably capture her toe with her index finger and thumb, like a pistol grip. She can probably capture it and relax her shoulders back down. So the important thing is that the shoulders are relaxed, the neck and head is relaxed, and you can breathe easily into your belly as you do this. Now this is not easy for everyone, so you put a strap around your heel and you hold the two ends of the strap in that same hand, in that one hand, in the same hand as the raised leg, and you press the heel into the strap. Press the heel into the strap. Toes come down a little bit, that's it. So this is your starting point, wherever you are, and not everyone will be here. Some of you, your feet will be more above the hips, or you might even need to bend your leg a little bit initially, but you're still pushing into that strap with your heel. And look past your toes to the ceiling and mentally make a note of how far your toes are over your head, and just pay attention to that. Now breathing in, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring some weight into the heel, almost as if she's trying to push her leg more deeply into the hip socket. So she actually pulls on the strap, and then that will give a little bit of release just in itself. So she's able to take the foot over just a little bit in herself. Now she breathes into the belly and into the heart, and on the exhale she sends that breath through both legs, not just the strap leg, but she's through the top leg, she sends it through the heel to the strap, and that leg is straightening as she does. She can do a straight leg. And through the bottom leg, she's sending that breath out through that heel as well, trying to maintain that awareness of equal action through the inner and outer heel. And she just stays there and breathes comfortably for a few breaths. Now the first variation is to take the leg out to that same side. She's going to rotate the thigh so that the foot turns 45 degrees outwards. Then keeping her hand on the other thigh and hip so it stays grounded, she's going to slowly lower that leg out. Now you can see with Kath that because she's got the flexibility, she's having to bend her arm to use the strap. So I'll get her to get rid of the strap. She doesn't need it, but you at home, you may or may not need it. You want to have your arm straight. You don't want to bend the elbow, and keeping that opposite hip grounded. Don't go for the floor. That's not important. So even bring that leg up a little bit. Bring it up. Now breathe in and send breath through both legs. The extended leg out to the side towards the floor, and the leg that's extended along the floor, anchoring you down, grounding that lower leg buttock to the floor, and breathe there. And this works on the inner hamstrings. You spend a good few breaths in each position, and then slowly bring that leg back up to the centre again. Now you change sides, and again, if you're using the strap, you just hold the strap with the other hand. If you're not using the strap, you just hold the foot with the other hand. If you don't happen to have a strap, you can hold outside your shin or your calf. But the most important thing in this is before you start taking the leg over, you use your free hand to grab hold of that hip and roll it down. You can see Kath's rolling it down towards her bottom heel, towards the bottom of the mat, and she's creating length in the waist. And now she takes that foot over the body and slightly up towards her shoulder. She can be holding the toe because she can, the outside of the foot. But keep rolling that hip down. This is the most important part. If you don't roll the hip down, you will not get that outer hamstring access. Now at this point, it's not about getting the foot to the floor. Even very flexible people won't necessarily take their foot to the floor in this. It's about getting that outer hamstring stretch. Now it's literally where you would expect to feel it is sort of in the outside edge of the knee, and it's not a pleasant feeling, I have to admit. It can make you feel a bit sick, it can make you want to stop breathing, and it can make you want to throw something at the screen. So just smile to yourself and take a good breath into the belly and just relax into it as best you can, but still keep it engaged, still keep that hip rolling down, still keep that heel active, pushing away from the leg and the toe towards the head a little bit. So you're really getting that release in the outer hamstring. And inhale, bring it up to the center. And then lowering that leg over your head again. And as you can see, Kath has got more release in her hamstring just from doing those few simple exercises. And she's just going to breathe there for a few breaths. And again, she might want to deepen the head of the femur into the hip socket and then draw the foot down over her head a tiny bit more. That's it. And she's just going to breathe there. So really working in this way when you're working with joints, hips, knees, joints are of the earth element. There's a lot of earth, a lot of structure in them. Structure is an earth-based quality. So we have to take things slowly. These things don't change quickly. So we spend time in the pose. Then taking an inhale, and on the exhale, release that leg. And just take a few breaths to relax and enjoy that nice, open, loose hip that you have. Feels really good. So now we want to create the same on the other side. So we bring that leg up, holding the toe or using the strap as you need to. Just with the one hand, And making sure the shoulders are relaxed and the breath is nice and relaxed into the belly. Neck, shoulders, head relaxed. And breathing in, then sending that breath down through that bottom leg, up through that top leg, and looking past the toes and noticing where your natural extension is, making a mental note how far your toes go over your head. You can look along the ceiling and see if there's a mark there that you can reference later. Now turning that foot out 45 degrees, hand on the opposite leg on the hip to remind that hip and buttock to stay grounded. So this is like Trikonasana. You're sending action equally through both legs. So if you let that leg drop down to the floor and the hip and buttock comes off, it just means you've lost control of the pose and you're losing the release that you can get from it. So sending that energy through, when the energy is through, the leg is light, it doesn't need to drop, and you've got control of it. So you're sending that energy through that extended leg and down through that bottom leg and feeling that nice release in the groin and hip. And then when you're ready, bringing that leg up again, changing hands and using the free hand to grab hold of the hip and roll it down, creating length in the waist and flexing the foot before you start to take it over. And you're taking that leg across the body and slightly up towards the shoulder. And you should get that nice sensation in that outer hamstring again. That's what we're looking for. Oh, feels so disgusting, but so good. And you just breathe there. Remember to smile softly, consciously make a choice to relax and release, emptying that breath. Good, very good. Breathing in, belly hard, breathing out, sending breath through both legs equally. Keep that hip rolled down. There's a lot of inertia in those hips, so it's hard work. It is hard work, but keep rolling it down. Don't let it roll back up again. Don't shorten that waist. And then up through the center And exhale, lowering the foot over the head and seeing if you've got a little bit more release. And again, you might feel like pressing the head of the femur into the hip socket a little bit more and then drawing the foot over the head even a bit more. That's good. So noticing if you look past your foot to the ceiling, your foot will have gone past that landmark. And then when you're ready, take an inhale. After a few breaths, just letting your body know that's your new length. And then release, enjoying both hips feeling light and open. So now we're going to do a little bit more work to open the hips. We're not going to stay long in this video because you can stay longer. I do want you to stay longer, but first one we're going to come up to when you're ready is cross legs forward. So Kath's going to grab a couple of blankets. So just remember, if you can't easily fold forward, then you want to make sure you have blankets to sit on, and you may need one to roll underneath your ankle as well. So you get enough height so that you can sit upright on the top of your sitting bones, and you get a second blanket ready. Usually we roll it just long ways, but if you are quite tall or quite muscular, you may need to roll it short ways instead. So Kath has just rolled it long ways, so it's not as thick, but you can spin the blanket around and roll it the other way, which makes it thicker, and you place it under your ankles. Now the reason we do this is remembering our hinge joint. So if I get Kath to take the blanket away and let the ankles drop, you can see what it does to the knee. The knee has now got a curve in it sideways. So Kath's going to point to her knee and show the curve in it. So yeah, you can see that curve. It bears a sideways pressure, and it's the same as if she stands up. If she stands up and she rolls out on the outside edge of her feet, there's pressure sideways into that knee. And if she rolls out on her ankles, which she doesn't really want to do too much. It's not a comfortable way, and it puts pressure on the knees. So we really want to maintain that ankle lifted and the ability to work through all 4 points of the foot, even in poses like this. So blanket under the ankles, lifting those ankles up, pressing the little toe into the floor, pressing the big toe as if you're on a standing, so all 4 points of the foot still get action. Lifting up through the chest, take the hands to the waist and have the elbows facing back, and lead forward with your heart, and imagine someone is pulling your elbows back as you fold forward. So remembering, the point of this pose is not to get as far forward as you can, but to try and get movement through the hip sockets. And then once you've gone forward as far as you comfortably can, wherever that is, you take the hands forward. Now, some of you that are used to doing cross legs without the blanket there, you'll think, this is stopping me going forward. Well, you've just learned something about your body. You've learned that you're probably going further than your body is ready to, and that you're asking the knees to compensate for the lack of the movement in hips. So we want to not feel it in the knees, we do want to feel it in the hips. And we just relax here again for as long as you can. 1 to 3 minutes is quite normal. Today we won't spend quite as long there, but when you're practicing on your own, you can pause the video or you can write it down and just stay as long as you like. 1 to 3 minutes each side. Kath's going to inhale, come up. I'm just going to cross the legs the other way. Now, just a further reminder that you want the movement to come from the hip socket. So she's actually going to grab hold of her thighs and push them into the hip socket first, into the crease, push them into the crease, into the hip socket towards her body, and then roll them out, and then elbows are back and she leans forward with her heart. So Kath, I'll just get you to release, hands on thighs, and push in first, in. That's it, and then roll out, that's it, very good. And then elbows back, heart forward, and going forward, really making sure that that hip is where the movement is coming from, not the knees. The ankles are lifted, the foot is working, and so there's no pressure on those knees. And if you want to even take further pressure off the knees, you can press the little toe into the floor and forward a little bit. So you can actually press down and forward. And then relaxing,
and spending time there, keeping the feet engaged. The feet are working the whole way through. Everything else is fairly soft, and the breath is soft. Nice, very nice. And inhale, coming up. And exhale, smiling and sighing. That's it. So we might just do one more hip opener. We'll just do pigeon today. That's another good one. Now, in the beginning, especially if your knee's a bit sensitive, roll a blanket up and place it underneath your hip, from your outside, underneath your thigh, the leg that's going to be in front, and all the way from the outside of the knee to the hip, you're going to place it underneath there. So, once Kat's done that, I'm actually going to get her to change sides. I just want you to be able to see that. And now I'll get her to flip legs, change legs. Just change legs, that's it. So, because the next point that we want to look at is the foot. Now, for beginners, your foot is way back in your groin, sitting just underneath your opposite hip, but you flex the toe if you can. You're taking that pressure off with the knee. You're turning your hips down if you can. Now, if you can, you walk forward to, you can rest on your forearms and then rest your head and forehead on the ground if you can. Now, if you can't rest in this way, you can make a pillow with your hands first, or your fists, or if you need a bit more height, you can use a bolster. And I'll just slide a bolster across to Kath so she can, oops. So you can actually rest on that bolster, give yourself a bit more height. And if you really need it, if your hips are very, very tight, you can even use the chair. So, the important part is not getting yourself down, but turning that hip down and activating that front foot and getting release in that bent leg hip. And of course the back leg, you don't forget about that. You're sending energy through that back leg, so it feels like it's getting longer and longer and longer. Now Kat's going to get rid of the chair and come to the other side. So again, sliding that back leg back, rolling that hip down, and relaxing that head. Whatever position that you can, you're spending time in it and you're resting there. Now you can spend longer in this one. If you're comfortable, if you support yourself well enough, you can spend 3 minutes or even 5 minutes each side. I'm not recommending that you do, but you can. So 1 to 3 minutes each side is really beneficial. If you make this practice your practice for the day, just every now and again, every other day, do a longer practice. Otherwise, you can do these postures in a shorter time, just 1 minute each side, and then continue with more regular practice. Or you can include 1 or 2 of the postures in your regular practice. But every day, try to do something that releases your hamstrings, your hips, and try to work with awareness of the feet. Now, I just need to change sides again. Sorry, Kath. I forgot to show the advanced versions. If you're got more flexibility, so the beginner version is having the foot into the groin. Now, as you get more flexible, not all the way forward yet, Kath, just halfway. Now, at that halfway point, the foot wants to slide back. So you put your hand on it, you hold it there. And then when you lay forward, you are holding it with your hand. And you can still rest your head and you can still have the other hand wherever you want. But you hold it there because it will slide back to the groin. And so you get a deeper stretch into the hips. And inhale, she's going to come up and she's going to take that foot all the way forward so that the shin is parallel to the front of the mat. She turns that back hip down and slides that back foot away and lays down over that front shin, and she can relax there. Now, usually you don't need to hold the foot, so you can put the hands wherever you like, but sometimes you might enjoy holding the foot so you've got something to press the foot into, because remember, we still want to work that foot. Little toe presses into the floor, big toe can press into the hand, heels can press into the hand. You can give yourself something to work against. So it's up to you what you feel comfortable with and what you need in your body. And then she's going to come up, inhaling and exhale, release. So we're going to put all of those things together into one pose today. So that pose is going to be Parsvakonasana. And I'm actually going to get Kath a block, or she can use a bolster or a block. So if you don't have a lot of room in your hip or your back, you can also place your hand on a chair, but today I'm just going to demonstrate with the block. So where that block is going, in front of that front foot, your legs are quite a long length away, a little bit longer than your leg length, and they're either side of an imaginary line. So don't have that foot too far either side of an imaginary line. So bringing that back foot just forward a tiny bit, that's it. Turn before you do anything. You're bending that front leg down as close as you can to 90 degrees, and you're keeping those hips turned forward. They're turned forward. Now your block can be, she's got it up quite high, but you can have it on the lower side as well. She won't need it higher than that. When you place your hand down on the block on the inside, you notice that your knee is over the centre of your ankle. That's where you want it, and you want it to stay there. You don't want it to come in closer towards the block. So you don't want it to roll in. You want to have firm action onto the outside edge of the heel. All 4 points of the foot, firm action. And this helps to place the knee where you want it. The knee is over the ankle. And then that crease of her hip is in line with the knee as well. And the outer edge of the thigh is parallel to the outside edge of the mat. Now, she is locking that knee in place by the back of her arm, and she can even bend her arm a little tiny bit just to make sure that that knee stays there. Now she places her hand on her belly. Now to turn up, she keeps the knee locked in position. She presses into the front foot really strongly. She wants to keep, especially the outer edge of the heel, and she starts to turn the belly up. So she wants to get that movement from the hip, not from the knee, not from the back. Now, she may or may not turn that hip all the way up. It depends on how open the hips are. She's quite open, but some of you may not be that open, and you may turn your hips down even more. You might keep your hips down a little bit, but you try to flatten that navel in. Now, roll your shoulder back so that shoulders are on top of each other, and then float that top hand up. Breathing in, take a good breath. Now press away from the floor in both feet, spread both toes, good action in all 4 points of the foot on both feet, and push away from that block. So you're turning up towards the ceiling with your navel and reaching up to the ceiling with your chest. Beautiful. And inhale, coming up. Changing sides. So even if you don't need a block, it's really useful when doing this kind of work where you might hold a little bit longer and you want to have space and room to explore the movement. It's really useful to come out. You've got a little bit more space in those joints to really get that awareness happening. So again, she's making sure that that foot is working properly, especially it tends to roll in, the knee tends to roll in, and the weight tends to go the inside heel, so she's making extra effort to press into the outside heel and keep that knee over the centre line of the ankle. Hand to belly, turning that navel up, pressing away from the block, and rolling that shoulder back so that shoulders are on top of each other, and floating that arm away just in line with the collarbones, not to the ceiling. And she takes another breath, and on the exhale she presses into both feet equally. Strong work through both feet, presses away from that block. So she reaches up, reaches away with that top hand. Beautiful. And inhale, coming up. Now we will do just one more standing Trikonasana, because this is another good one where we tend to have knee problems where we hyperflex. And if you work your foot properly, you cannot hyperflex. So if Kath hyperflexes her knee, which means the back of the knee opens more than it should, you can see that the front foot is lifting up away from the ground. But if she softens that leg off and really works hard at activating those 4 points of the foot, and then she takes a breath and she exhales and she pushes all of her energy, all of her breath into those 4 points of the foot, her leg will naturally straighten, and her feet are completely engaged into the ground. There is no way that she can hyperflex. She also notices that when she works her foot properly, the ankle, which she's going to point to, the ankle, the knee, and the centre of the thigh are all in one beautiful straight line. She's going to place the block down on the inside today, so she can just focus on maintaining that action of the leg, and navel to hand to navel, turning navel up, getting the turn from the hip so that thigh, that front thigh continues to roll in an outward direction, and she turns the belly up a little, then she floats the arm up for full Trikonasana. Beautiful. Now she breathes, and on the exhale she sends all her breath into those feet, and as she presses that foot down and forward, the head of the femur moves more deeply into the hip socket, taking the hips further back. Beautiful. And the side of the waist gets more length. Beautiful. And she presses away from that bottom block and her navel and torso lift up towards the ceiling. Excellent. Very, very nice. And now she softens the legs off, presses into the earth to come up, and we change sides. So hyperflexion is the other problem. We don't want to hyperflex either, and some people are hyperflexible, so they actually feel sometimes like they are bending their legs, but when you focus on working the feet instead of what your leg's doing, it will naturally be straight and it will not hyperflex. So really place your attention on the foot. You can go a tiny bit shorter, Kath, just a tiny bit shorter, that's it. Good, so Trikonasana should be roughly your leg length. That's it. And she's working on those feet, and she presses that front foot forward and down, and as it presses forward and down, that leg straightens, and the head of the femur moves more deeply into the hip socket. And you see what's happening there. Her back hip rolled slightly forward, which is exactly what it needs to do. Her body is showing her where her natural position is. If she focuses on foundation and then moves the awareness up, turning the belly now, but keeping that front foot engaged, keeping that front thigh rolling out. So the belly and the thigh are both rolling away from each other. Floating that hand up. She breathes in and she breathes out, sending that energy into both feet, pressing away from the block with the hand and lifting that torso and upper arm up. And of course, she's got that beautiful lifted long neck as well, because the breath goes all the way through to the crown. Inhale, coming up, pressing into the feet, and inhale, come up. Exhale, release. And I'm going to get Kat to go down into down dog. So in down dog, just walk forward slightly, Kath, with your hands as well. Hands can walk forward. Yeah, just so you're a bit further forward, that's it. So she takes time breathing. Now, Kath doesn't have hyperflexion in her knees, but down dog is another point where sometimes the hyperflexion happens. So if she pushes strongly, now really, if you're very stiff, then every technique has a purpose to a point. If you happen to be very, very, very stiff and your legs are locked in a bent position, a little bit of pushing through the back leg can start to counteract that. But once you're not stiff, what that does is start to take you into hyperflexion. So you can see her knees are being pushed and her back of her knees is really open. It's not good for the knee joint. The knee joint doesn't like to be flexed in that way. So she softens off the legs, just a fraction. She breathes in. She focuses on sending breath down into the earth, through the hands down and forward. The navel lifts away. The heels of the feet move down and the toes spread, the arches lift, and her legs are nice and straight again, but without her pushing back through them. They just straighten automatically when you work the feet properly and use the breath. So even though sometimes when you're getting used to this way of working, they can feel like they're bent, when you look at her legs, they're not bent. And then she can walk her feet forward and come to a standing position. Thank you very much, Kath. That was a great job. And thank you very much for watching. Hope you get something out of this. If you need to, please, if you have any questions, please either call us or email us at the Yoga Centre, yoga88@goldcoastyogacentre.com. If there is anything on this video that you don't understand or you need a bit more information on. Namaste.